Welcome to the Jamal Bryant Let's Be Clear podcast, where we talk about everything that will impact your life. Today, we are having our own first podcast to have Fashion Week. One of the most influential voices and a looming legend in the industry is with me on today. He's a brother, he's a friend, and he is an innovator, Roderick Harvey.
Glad to be here. Look, I need to get you to introduce me every time.
Oh, listen, I'm bribable. I can do that, absolutely. In Atlanta, there are T-shirts that go around, especially in the summer, that says Atlanta influences everything. But I'm going to take it a step further, that Black people influence everything. And most importantly, most influentially, would be fashion.
Yes.
You are probably one of the most discussed, talked about, and mimicked designers of the post-pandemic space. And I want you to really talk about how you think that Black people influence fashion.
Oh, man, I think the culture, Black people in general, fashion came, I believe we started fashion.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're more influential now than we've ever been.
Yeah.
So I think that is a big thing as far as the culture is concerned, because if you look at the internet now, the influencers and the big brands that are owned by whites and other ethnics of people, they tend to look to us to influence their brand.
I am really in the middle of a conversation. I don't want to indict you in any way, but I am afraid on the impact of influencers on fashion. I don't know if 10 years ago, Pharrell could have got a deal with Louis Vuitton.
No way.
But because of his influence, not necessarily because of his fashion eye, it's a whole lot of Black designers who would have a different kind of lens. But you think about who can sell the merchandise.
Right.
How much of an impact do you think influencers now have on fashion?
A whole lot. Yeah. And I think because time has taken its course, I think a lot of people have recognized that us as Black people, as you've stated so many times, we're the people who spend the money.
Yeah.
In order to get the money, they have to put somebody in place that we're influenced by to spend our dollars. And I think that's bigger now than ever because of the space that we're in.
You work with a lot of rappers, a lot of athletes, a lot of entertainers, but you're also a preacher's kid. And the reason why a lot of entertainers, a lot of artists, a lot of athletes said that they don't go to church is because it's a fashion show. But I want to talk about why is that a detraction where we don't mind getting dressed up everywhere else, but if you get dressed for church, it seems like that's a problem.
I think people have made their own mind and own assumptions of the church as a whole. And I think instead of going fashion forward, we're going fashion forward, but we're going church backwards.
Wow.
So I think we're trying to take the church backwards and move everything else forward. And we can't divide. We can't take away that because everything has to go forward. And I think this is a day and time where we're having to reach people who have never been to church before in their life.
Yeah.
And to say, put on your black suit on first Sunday and your white shirt and a black tie. Right. Church will be full of old people and people who have been in church all their lives. So in order to reach those people, I think we've had to say, come as you are.
Yeah.
And we've had not only had to say that, we've had to mean that.
Yeah.
Because so many people have come as you are Sunday.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, now after this Sunday, I came as I was. What do I do next Sunday?
Right.
So I think that's the thing that has arisen in the church now. We have to make sure that we keep in mind that we're trying to reach a culture that has been lost.
Wow.
You know, we're trying to reach a culture that has been lost and is lost.
Yeah.
You know, so when you look at a person, I watched your episode with Bishop Murphy.
Yeah.
When you look at a person who's very influential in trying to reach a whole generation that hasn't been, I'm a PK, I've been in church all my life.
Right.
So I don't mind hearing Amazing Grace.
Right. Right.
But it's some people out there that need to hear different voices and different things. As long as it's in a church space, I think we're safe.
Yeah.
You know?
My uncle was Frank Lucas, biggest drug dealer in America.
And a fashion icon.
And a fashion icon. That was my uncle. I preached his eulogy 3 years ago. And it was amazing to me. We had to, Roderick, have the funeral in New Jersey because he was banned from the state of New York.
Wow.
First person who was an American citizen banned from a state.
Yeah.
Banned from the state of New York, that they were afraid of how he would run a drug operation from behind prison bars. Wow. I could talk all day on your impact, your influence, but I wanted to bring you on to really tell the story how you built a brand to $1 million company behind bars.
Wow.
And nobody talks about how it is that you really emerged and was doing sketchings and drawings and placing orders from behind jail.
Behind jail.
Yeah, I want you to talk on 3 different things because I got inside trading. First, I want you to talk about how and why you got arrested.
Wow. So, and before I started this brand, I owned a company. I had a medical marketing company where I was basically sending people to the doctor who had been in automobile accidents.
Yeah.
I did that for years, made hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the insurance company, because I was getting people going to the doctor that would have never went to the doctor if they wouldn't have gotten a call from me.
Right.
State Farm and Nationwide Insurance got together and basically went to the legislators and said, we need to change the law because we're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars, not a year, but a week because of this guy. So now they go and the law changes and says, you can no longer access these names of people that are public record. Now it's closed record, which made it illegal now.
You Black History Month.
So they made it illegal.
Yeah.
But by me being influential to people, knowing people, I still found a loophole to still get the information. I had people that worked in hospitals. I had people who were police officers that gave me the information. I did that for years. And one day I woke up and I was staying at a luxury, deluxe apartment in the sky in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I woke up and I heard knocking on my door. And I woke up out of a deep sleep. I looked out the peephole and it was about 25 U.S. Marshals at my door.
Wow.
Went through that process. I got arrested and charged. And I didn't think it was a big deal, but leading up to that, I went through it. It was a federal case. I
got to stop you right here. I got to ask you a question. I ask all of my friends this. Not all of my friends. All of my friends have gone through a process. We can come back to the story. You got to tell me about that first night in jail.
Well, I had been to jail so many times by then. Hey, I had been to jail so many times for little stuff back then, before then.
Right.
I knew what my first night would be like.
Wow.
So
what was it like? Tell me.
Well, you go through the process of being processed in, which takes hours and hours. I was in Maricopa County where it took about 3 days to process me in. I was sitting in a plastic chair for 3 days before I got to a bed.
Wow.
And got processed in, and then that's when you're in. You know you're there now when you get in your bed.
Right.
So that was the process of my first night. My first 3 nights.
Wow. Okay. Now, fast forward. If you're in there, I don't want to break the law or compromise your testimony. How are you running a company? How are you running a company where people are at the Super Bowl, at the All-Star game, at Grammys, at the Stellars, wearing your stuff, and you wearing Orange is the New Black?
You know, one thing.
And they didn't know that you were arrested.
And they didn't know I was arrested.
Yes.
And the only people that knew I was arrested was the people that wasn't going to support me anyway. So I'm in jail, and I had a guy that was literally running my business from jail. and I tell this story to everybody. I'm very transparent with my story now because I believe God put me in a position and trusted me enough to go through what I went through because he knew my story was going to help others.
Right.
So I had a guy, let's back up a little bit. I knew how to be a salesman, but I didn't know how to do business.
Wow.
So early on, before I started Starstruck, I was a tailor for 13 years.
Yes.
And sometimes I feel like God will put your talent in escrow until your character matches up to your talent.
Wow.
And I believe he had to put me in a position to put somebody else in place of my business, that new business, to help with the infrastructure of what I had going on so I can know how things should have went. So I'm in jail, and I'm literally, first of all, I get to jail, and I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to be able to bond out. There was no bond. They said, no, we don't know. He's got this situation. It's too big of a situation. It was all over the news, plastered on the news, and they kept saying that I was could face up to 75 years in prison.
Ooh.
And a $2 million fine. It's all over the news.
And nobody's dead.
Nobody's dead.
There's no bullets that's been discharged.
No, but because of the significance of the crime, and it was the top tier white collar crime, and they said it was up to 75 years I could have faced and $2 million fine. Keep in mind, I was costing the insurance company about, from what the paperwork said, $200,000 a week.
Good grief.
And they made it so that it looked like I was a man when I had 5 women that were giving me information. So they tried to make it look like I was this powerful pimp or something, manipulating these women to give me the information. I'm like, oh, I'm paying these people for information. So I went through that process. It took about 3 years and a couple $100,000 out of my pocket, and my parents' pocket, my dad's pocket. We were in everybody's pocket.
Right.
Think I even got in yours a little bit.
You did both.
But that is over. I went through that situation, but talk about how I was in jail with no bond. Didn't know when I was getting out, if I was getting out, but I had a pen and a piece of paper, and I was sketching stuff that I wanted to do when I got out, whenever I got out.
Wow.
I came up with this sunglass line. I did the sunglass line. I came up with hoodies that I wanted to do. I did. So everything I manifested on that paper, I manifested when I got out. So I didn't let my situation put me in a position where I just went null and void on what I had my vision set out to.
Yeah.
So here it is. I'm going through the process in federal court. And I never talked about this to my family because I didn't want my family to be as depressed.
Yeah.
But they came and my lawyers came with this paper and said, hey, you can sign for 10 years today. And he said, you do 5 and you'll get out. I said, I can't do that. I kept in my mind my business. And I kept saying my business. I can't just let my business just die like that.
Right.
I got to keep. So make a long story short, today is February the 6th.
Okay.
Is that today's the 6th?
It can be.
Okay, today's February the 6th. January 28th was my 42nd birthday. January 29th, I stood in federal court to get sentenced for this particular case.
Wow.
I go into the courtroom and the prosecutor says, our sentence recommendation is 2 years. The judge was ready to accept that recommendation. It was a fair recommendation.
Yeah.
And I would have had no problem with the recommendation. My lawyer got up and said, well, wait a minute, we have some paperwork that we want you to see. And he showed them what my business had done financially. He showed them the articles that were on the internet about me and the business. And the judge said, give me a minute, let's take a recess. And when the judge came back, he said, it's no way I can send this guy to jail. He said, we sit and talk about people taking negative energy and using it to do something positive. And this guy is the proof. This young man is the proof.
Wow.
He said, I can't send him to jail.
Wow.
So he said, look, I understand y'all have a 2-year recommendation.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to override that. And he said, look, we going to put him on a probational period. And I want to be sentenced to prison.
Good grief.
The day before was my birthday. I had a nice birthday. I went out with a bang. And Monday morning I went. Didn't call a lot of my family. Didn't want a lot of people there.
Right.
Because I wanted to take mine by myself.
Yeah.
Mom wasn't there. Dad wasn't there. I had an uncle that was there that spoke for me, but that did a good job. But I wanted to just take it by myself. So I went, and he came back and said, probation and a little home detention. So I'm here today because I had to get permission to come.
I was making sure you had permission. I didn't want the ops busting through the door.
Yeah.
I want you to really talk through, because a lot of people online try to sell strategies about doing business and keys and principles and coaching, but you really lived it, and in a large measure are self-taught. I've got a lot of entrepreneurs who are listening today who don't have degrees, don't have mentors, may have stains on their record. What are the 2 keys you would give every person who's trying to go into entrepreneurship?
First thing you got to have is consistency. I think consistency wins. I think a lot of people start, and because they don't make the money right off, they tend to quit. And I think the first thing you got to have is consistency. Second thing you got to have a little favor. Mm. I think I look at all the stuff I've been through over the years, and I think favor, you got to know God. Got to have God in your life where some of this stuff you can't teach. Yeah. Some of this stuff just happens. So I think favor, consistency, and you got to know your craft. You have to study this stuff that you're doing. A lot of people tend to, I want to preach because I see Jamal Bryant is successful, but don't have the gift. I think you have to know what your gift is.
What is it that makes you not want to quit? Because there's got to be some brick walls to say, am I doing the right thing? Maybe I should just go another way.
I've been doing this long enough to know that the brick walls that means I'm headed to the next step.
Wow.
So I enjoy the brick walls because it's a part of my journey. It's a part of my story.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that made me not want to give up. It's like I went through so much. It's like it's gotta be a yellow brick road somewhere.
You grew up in the church. Your dad has one of the most successful churches in upstate New York. I want to, because you're familiar with God, you just talked about the favor that's on your life, is talk to a generation who needs to understand that you can have a calling and a ministry and not need a microphone.
It's
because I really think you are doing ministry.
It's crazy because everybody always comes to me and say, when you going to, since I was a kid, because I'm a pastor's PK, and I'm sure you went through this before you accepted your calling, when you going to preach?
Right.
When you going to preach? And I always said, I don't believe my ministry is to preach. I believe my ministry is the ministry of service.
Yeah.
So I don't think I don't have to have a microphone, but I'm ministering now.
Right.
Every week I send out a newsletter to 13,000 people to let them know what I'm going through.
You got 13,000 in your database.
I got 13,000 people. 3,000 of them are brand ambassadors.
Wow.
So I have 13,000 people that I email on a weekly basis, not to sell them anything.
Just to tell them that they need to listen to the Let's Be Clear podcast.
I'll do that next week.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's the thing. I believe I'm ministering to people even when I'm serving. So I think serving is a ministry that has been kind of tuned out because everybody wants the main stage.
There's a word that really at least crossed my path in the last 3 years, 4 years, that I don't remember hearing before, or at least as often. And the phrase is being a creative. Usually being artistic was a painter, a drawer, a dancer, a singer. What do you see a creative to be?
I think a creative is using your inner self to reach others. I think when you use what you have in you and bring it out, to affect and impact others, I think that's being creative.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a pen and a pad. You don't have to have a chalkboard or anything like that. But I think when you have anything you have in you that can help somebody else, is being creative.
No. Where do you see the trends going? I was watching a couple of weeks ago. They were moving, showing the best dress in the NFL. And I'm seeing a trend that I need you to address.
I already know what you're talking about.
Yes, about men wearing skirts and wearing dresses. Am I looking through it in a closed mind? Where is this taking us?
That's not where I'm going.
Okay.
So you won't see no Starstruck men dresses.
Skirts?
No,
okay.
Unless it's a female.
Yes.
But I think what happens is if you watch TV and different shows, they're pushing a narrative of this stuff, and it's carrying into the fashion industry. And I think for me, I think the fashion, I'm going fashion forward, but not that fast.
Right.
Not that fast. So I think it's a thing now, and I think it's a fad, but I think it's going to slowly come back to reality of how men should really dress.
Yeah. And speaking of that, you really have gone against the grain. History of fashion is going to have to really put an asterisk by your name of changing the dress for preachers. Oh, yeah. That now, because of your line, your influence, your impact, all over the country, preachers are wearing sweatsuits.
On Sunday morning.
What do you think that means to the future of the church? And is that a distraction?
We just talked about that. I think the pandemic, people were doing Zoom calls with jackets and short pants on and I think we just got comfortable knowing that you don't have to be so dressed up every day. And I think, it's a new thing, and it's comfortable.
Yeah. And
you still can look up to par in them. So I think that's the thing. People are just comfortable. I think that's just the new wave of fashion.
I've read this quote that really has haunted me till I could get a chance to talk to you on this platform, that black people in particular, will pay top dollar for European designers, but want a discount from black ones. What is your thought process of somebody walking up to you wearing a Louis belt and red bottom shoes and saying, Rod, your price is too high?
I say your shoes and your belt must be fake.
Wow.
Gotta be fake.
Wow.
So when I hear people talking about discounts, and I used to listen. I was one of those people that wanted people to wear my stuff.
Right.
But I had a girlfriend at the time who was a pharmacist who was making $150,000 a year.
Right.
And I would go from these conventions selling suits for a whole week and go home with nothing. And she said, "You didn't come home with nothing?" I said, "Well, not yet. It's coming."
Right.
And that made me stop giving my stuff away. I said, because I looked at it, like you said, they pay that we go in the Gucci store, don't even ask if there's a discount on this. It's not even a question.
Right.
And I said, the reason why we don't value the black designers, a lot of the black designers don't value themselves. I had to value myself to make people value me.
Yes.
Now you can't order on my phone. You got to go to my website. And it's not because of my arrogance or cocky, because you know me, I'm humble as they come. But it's because of my organization and me being true to my brand. Because I was talking about this on the way here with a friend. You want people to buy your stuff. So if they call, you say, "Hey, send it to my Cash App." So you go. None of that. If you want it, you have to go place the order the right way.
Right.
So that's the thing. I think you have to value yourself.
What has been the most frustrating thing that you've had to deal with in being a designer, trying to break into the market?
Well, when I first got in this, I think the most frustrating thing was, as blacks, we always say only one person can do this. Yeah. And because this person did it, you can't do it. And in my market, it was people that had already done some things that were similar to mine, and because mine came out after. But now that stigma has changed, because people have now allowed the space to be more innovative and more people in the space, but at the same time, I had to make my own mark. Yeah. I had to brand myself. So that was the most frustrating thing, was breaking through the barriers of coming behind this. It's just like if people would say, well, you sound like this person, or you sound, but at the same time, I had to come into myself and really learn that that's part of the process.
Yeah. The third largest fashion week, the first one is in Paris. The second one is in New York. The third largest fashion week now is in Lagos, Nigeria. What do you feel is the impact now of Africa on fashion?
Oh, I think Africa has been having an impact on fashion for years. I mean, look at it. We're in the month of February. All we're going to be wearing this month is African attire.
Right.
So I think that has been a year-long influence on us.
Yeah.
So especially we're going back to our roots. We're going back to the place where it all started for us. So I think that's a big part, because we've been doing that for years and years, since I can remember, is, especially this month. It's just a known thing that we're going back to putting on our African clothes.
Yeah. Coming back out from having to be incarcerated, how long were you incarcerated?
1 year.
For 1 year?
1 year. In 1 year, I went to 3 jails.
In 1 year?
1 year, in 3 different states. Once you get arrested, you're not getting out till you've cleaned up everything in what you ever had. I got arrested in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah.
For Memphis. So I got extradited on a plane in handcuffs, went to Memphis.
Now, hold on. When you're extradited, are you on a private plane?
No.
So are they walking you through the airport in handcuffs?
They're walking through the airport. Everybody knows.
Woo!
I was the first person on the plane and the last person off the plane. So I got to extradited, went to Memphis. Memphis says, well, Florida called and said, you got a warrant from 2004 for not taking a TV back to Rent-A-Center. So
no way.
Yes way. Florida calls and say, wait, before y'all let him out, we're coming to get him. They had 30 days to come get me, or I was going to be let free. They came and got me on the 30th day.
No. You thought you was free at last.
Everybody thought I was free. They just didn't think that Florida was going to come get me for so small of a crime. So when they came to pick me up, I asked the guy that was taking me, I said, what time my flight leave? He said, this is your flight. I rode 18 hours in the back of a van that I couldn't see out of, shackled up with short pants and a T-shirt on in the month of January. So
18 hours in a van.
18 hours. They stopped at Burger King, threw me a burger and some fries, and that was my meal, and a Dr. Pepper bottle to pee in if I had to use the bathroom.
Wow.
So that was I'm by myself. So that was a hard time for me, going through those different situations. But I still think it's it was part of my journey.
You had a supportive family, a supportive circle of friends walking out of that situation.
Walking out, yes.
Yeah. What is your thought about the prison pipeline and Black men?
As long as I stayed, because I had a good support system, I had commissary, I had food, I had clothing, T-shirts, underwear. They don't even give you underwear in jail. So you have to buy those. So whatever underwear you came in, if you don't have money, those are the underwear you have to wear every day.
Ooh-wee.
And there was a lot of people that didn't have the right care,
right,
in the right financial situation. So I think it's no place you want to be. It's no place you want to be, especially if you don't have any support system, because it was difficult for a lot of people. But I had a good support system, and I had people that helped me throughout my journey. But at the same time, it still was rough.
Yeah,
it still was rough.
With all of those charges, I can only imagine it would be close to impossible to be where it is that you are today, economically and professionally, if you were not an entrepreneur.
Most definitely.
Yeah, because a lot of returning citizens have an issue even getting an interview or a call back because that's on their record.
Most definitely.
I've heard of job training programs for returning citizens. I have not heard about entrepreneurship training for returning citizens.
No.
If churches, communities are really going to do prison outreach or returning citizens projects, what are the things that they need to do? And I say that because when I was pastoring in Baltimore, I did a human prayer chain around the city jail, 2,000 people. After I finished, the warden brought me in to preach. 200 men got saved. I'm giving high fives to all of my guys. Oh, this is a great day for God. The warden pulled me aside and said, Pastor, that was great. But these guys need housing. If you ain't providing housing, they're going to end up back in this same position.
For sure.
What is the best way families, individuals, or churches can help those who are coming back out?
Man, I was in jail for 1 year. And I met some of the smartest men, some of the most educated men, some of the most influential people that just messed up.
Yeah.
As me.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things we have to do is be more acceptable of these people. Because sometimes even me, I was ashamed of my situation for a long time.
Right.
But I think we turn our nose up so much at people who have messed up. And then when we mess up, we want people to give us grace. And so I think the thing about the church, I think we have to have programs implemented to say, look, what's the root of your problem? A lot of these people just need therapy. I had to go through therapy for problems I didn't know I had.
Wow.
So I think we have to find out what the root of the problem is, because everybody that's breaking in cars ain't breaking in cars for fun.
Right. Somebody said America's the only place that incarcerates those who need medical assistance.
And if you get incarcerated, you're going to need medical assistance based on the food that they serve you.
Wow.
I had never had high blood pressure until I went to jail.
Not possible. Possible.
I had never looked at the back of a chip bag to look at the ingredients and the health facts on the back of a chip bag. So just imagine I was eating some of the most saltiest chips that you can eat 4 or 5 times a day. And the nurse came and she said, show me the chips you eat. And it was these popular chips called shebangs. If you've been to jail, you know about shebangs.
I've never heard of shebang, but I'm going to look
popular,
at it.
You got to look it up. Look at the back of that chip. And I showed it to her. She said, how many of these you eat a day? I said, 3 bags. She said, you're going to have a stroke.
Wow.
And the food that they serve is some of the most unhealthiest food that you ever want to eat in your life.
What is not widely discussed is the fastest growing prison population in America is Black women.
Wow.
Not Black men. And whenever we think about prison ministry, it's always on the men's side of the aisle, but nothing for women who are incarcerated. I really think that there's got to be a overhaul, because when America thinks about crime, they think about Black men. But the lead proponents of crime in America are white males. White males do the greatest amount of murder, greatest amount of armed robbery, greatest amount of rape, greatest amount of assault, and Black men have the greatest amount of possession and are finding themselves being possessed. I don't know if you saw just the other day, a young man was sentenced to 10 days in jail because he overslept for jury duty. 10 days for oversleeping for jury duty. If we're in the middle of a presidential elections cycle, if you were to have a one-on-one with Trump and Biden, what would you say to them about prison reform?
Well, I'd have to tell them that, first of all, I think it's almost irate. We should be irate about how they treat blacks in general.
Yeah.
And I think we have to take a look at that because it's definitely not equal. We know that. But let's get at least close to it. If we can't get equal, can we get close?
Yeah.
We're so far away from even getting close to the 50-50 mark of that kind of situation. We're just so far away from it being equal that I don't think we'll ever get there. But like I said, we got to close the gap just a little bit, because when you look at these sentences of blacks and versus others, it's not even close.
Al Sharpton calls Ben Crump the Attorney General for black people. And Benjamin Crump said the number one thing black people can help do and turn around the criminal justice system. I tell you this, Roger, you ain't gonna believe it. He says you don't need to march, you don't need to protest. Number one thing black people can do is show up for jury duty.
Wow.
Is that we call out sick, say that we can't make it. And so as a consequence, we don't have our peers there in that process. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with them? You disagree?
I definitely agree, because when you let the others determine and dictate the future of us, it's not going to turn out right. But like he said, if we showed up for jury duty, we'd have the fate of our people in our hands. But because we don't show up, somebody else has the fate, and it's not fair, but it is fair because we didn't show up.
Yeah. Where do you see fashion going in this post-pandemic era?
You know, I've looked at it and I've tried to pinpoint it, and what I do see is, I think eventually all that fashion, the men wearing the dresses, I think that's gonna change. I think it's gonna come back to men dressing like men and women dressing like women.
You're gonna have a whole lot of people calling on this show.
Yeah, so I definitely think that's gonna change pretty soon. I think it's slowly coming back a little bit, but I think that's gonna change, and we're gonna get back to dressing the way we used to dress.
Yeah. In business, they often use a terminology called a silent partner. Somebody who's in the business but not seen.
I know where this is going.
Oh, listen, we're gonna be clear right now. I know where
this is going.
I want you to talk about the silent partner and influencer who has gotten no credit, gotten no check, and gotten absolutely no commendation for Starstruck. I don't know who that person is.
You know,
but talk about the birth.
I'm gonna tell this story. I'm gonna tell this story once and for all.
Yes.
Just
I need y'all to zoom in. I need y'all to zoom in.
So if y'all not on JamalBryant.org, you won't hear this anywhere else.
Absolutely.
But one of the main reasons.
Not one of them. Not one. Don't do that. Not one of them. The reason. Go right there. We fine.
Okay, so one day I was sitting on my couch. I was actually living in Pembroke Pines, Florida at the time. And the pandemic had just hit. And by me being a tailor selling custom suits, I actually texted Dr. Brian and said, hey, I got some new fabrics in. And, you know, I'm waiting on him to say, yeah, give me 5 good ones and send them to me and charge me and whatever. And that wasn't the case. He sent me a text back and said, what are you doing? We're not going to be wearing suits for a long time. You need to figure out something else to do. You need to find some athleisure wear to do. And I had to Google athleisure wear. So when I Googled athleisure wear, I said, let me figure out what I can do. And a week later, I was texting him designs and mock-ups. And he said, well, that look nice. That look good. So that's the reason why I started searching.
That's all.
And looking.
This is great.
For something else to do.
This is great.
You happy?
I'm ecstatic, almost. But I want to go a step further. I've got people who are listening from all over the world. I want them to support this black business. I want them to support you. I think there should be a product code for Let's Be Clear. For those who are listening, so that they can support you. But you will know that it came back to the co-founder of somebody who's been supporting you through the whole thing. Tell them the website, how they can find out about it.
The website is www.let's starstruckcollection.com.
Yes. I'm glad to have you. I'm glad you're not in jail.
Let me just say this, since you're getting all your accolades, let me get all this out right now. Yes. When I got out of jail, my first week out, I got a text from this man, and he said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm in Memphis." He said, "What's your Cash App?" And I had people saying, "What's my Cash App?" for a whole week. He sent me $500 to my Cash App. And at that time, I had $500 to my name after he sent me the Cash App. So I just appreciate him. I don't even think he remembered. You remember?
Vividly.
Okay. Now, he's a very frugal guy. He's very frugal. So I know he remembered $500.
Oh,
so
no, absolutely.
He sent me $500. And man, I never would forget. I remember it like yesterday. I took myself to Houston, hadn't had a good meal in a year.
You have been eating chips.
Yeah, I had been eating chips and Zuzus and spreads and all this kind of stuff. So I went and took myself to Houston's restaurant, and I splurged on myself a good meal because this man sent me $500.
I'm grateful. I believe in you. I want to challenge people who are listening to find somebody in your family, in your circle who you grew up with, and sow something into their life today. I want you to just encourage. You don't know what people are going through, what people are dealing with, how it is that they've had to hold their heads underwater, but they're still breathing. Great things are going to happen for you, Rod. I believe that you are just an example of who God can use, no matter where you've come from, and no matter what it is you've dealt with. You have listened to the greatest podcast that is streaming alive anywhere. So let's be clear. Jamal Bryant and my brother, my friend, and my co-creator, Roderick Harvey. Until next time.